We're here with Kathie Tovo, who is currently serving as Austin City Council Place 3, and she is now running for District 9. Thank you for being here, Kathie.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So you're in a competitive race, and everyone proclaims to be very strong for the environment. Tell us how you distinguish yourself.
Well, I certainly have been an environmental leader on the council, from supporting initiatives like efforts to improve our investment in clean energy resources, to stepping up and taking the lead in opposing SH 45 and making sure that we had a strong council record of opposition on that front, to really standing strong when it comes to zoning cases that are requesting variances to Save Our Springs ordinance.
Okay. When you think of the next 5 years, what is your greatest hope for our environment locally?
Well, we have some great initiatives in place. Our Austin Energy has entered into, or is preparing to enter into, some great contracts to really make sure that we're increasing our use of renewables. I think that sets us on a great path. We are poised to, I hope, take some concrete actions in terms of getting out of Fayette coal plant. That's going to be a challenge, but I think we're poised to have that conversation and really figure out how to do it. And I'm really pleased with the work that our water task force did this spring. They've provided us with some great recommendations. We've been able to advance some of those. I was pleased to bring forward a resolution to really move some of those important ideas forward, and I think concepts, recommendations like the Integrated Water Resource Management Plan is critical for our community to making sure that we are planning well for the future.
Say more about water, the strategies that we need to implement to accommodate the more people coming, less water in the lakes. What are we going to do?
Well, this is, as we all know, Austin is in a record drought, and it is critical that we address what short-term strategies we can take, what midterm strategies, and what are some of the longer-term options. And our task force pulled together with our staff from the Water Utility and from the Watershed Protection Department to propose some that fall into each of those categories.
What are some of your
Clearly,
favorites?
we need to invest more in our conservation efforts,
Right.
and that is something that we're already doing successfully, but we need to really maximize the potential there. That is our least expensive option, and it's certainly the option we need to take first and really maximize. We need to increase our use of reclaimed water and make sure that we're building out that infrastructure, that we're looking carefully and adopting any code changes we need to make it more readily accessible to more people in our community. So some of those initiatives are already in progress, but our task force gave us some strong recommendations about ways to move forward in those areas. And then we just had a discussion at council, a presentation based on the task force's work, but we had a discussion about some of the longer term conversations and how all of our energy decisions, for example, really need to take into account our water use and vice versa.
Right.
So those are just a few of the things that we need to really keep our eye on.
Sure. Okay, so let's shift to energy. Where should we be getting our energy, and where should we not be getting it?
Well, the generation plan task force update group really gave us some clear direction, and I'm fully in support of that group's work.
Just lay that out for people who may not have read it.
I sponsored the resolution to bring that group back together to reconstitute a generation plan task force, because we're doing very well at meeting our goals for renewables, but we can clearly do better. And that group came together and set some really great new goals for our community. And so we need to continue to increase our use of renewables and to reduce our dependence on coal and on gas.
Okay. In terms of
nuclear as well.
And nuclear.
I believe
Right, that uses a lot of water
yes,
as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, and where are you staying on Decker?
I am supportive of the task force's recommendation to try to replace that with solar and or other renewables.
Great. Let's talk about land use planning and transportation. These are a couple areas that you have strong feelings about and may distinguish you from opponents in your race. Could you say more about your vision and how you think things should be handled?
Sure, I'd be glad to. I would also say one other thing in answer to the last question is energy efficiency. I believe we have a lot of potential to expand in terms of our energy efficiency programs, and that is also should be our first, one of our first things to expand. In terms of land use, I do have some strong feelings about it. You know, we are experiencing growth in Austin. We will continue to experience those demands. and really Austin, I would say District 9 of all the districts is under the most intense development pressures. But we have choices every day about how we manage that, and that's what I think we should do. I think we should manage it, not rubber stamp it. We need to direct increased density to the areas where we've identified as appropriate. Those are typically along our transit corridors and some other areas. Almost all of our neighborhood plans within District 9 have identified areas where they want to see that increased density, and that's where it's most appropriate. And the other kinds of land use decisions that come before us need to be made also with a mind to the kind of infrastructure needs that density would demand.
Such as?
Such as stormwater, whether that particular development is going to impose make demands on our capacity for managing the stormwater, and if so, we need to plan around it, because we do have some examples of, for example, some of the developments along South Lamar. We welcome that increased density. However, it's created real flooding problems for the people immediately adjacent to it. The infrastructure just was not sufficient to support that increase in density.
So how should that be managed or paid for, or, what's the way forward on that?
Well, I think, number one, we need to make sure that we're evaluating it up front before those decisions are reached. And then I would say if there are impacts that are going to be created by a particular development, that development needs to bear the cost of mitigating them. Okay. To the extent possible.
Right. Let's talk about parks and trails and bikes and things like that. What is your vision for how we move forward on that? More and more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need, especially as Austin densifies, we need to make sure that people are within walking distance of a park. I served years ago on the Families and Children Task Force, and that was one of the things we heard over and over again throughout the city. People wanted to be within walking distance of a park, and actually the city adopted in response a goal that everybody in the city live within walking distance, and it's important. It's important for all kinds of reasons.
How close are we to that goal?
Not very. We have a lot of work to do, and we need to really look carefully at
how are we going to finance
other
this?
kinds. Well, it's both. I think we need to leverage some of our partnerships. Working together with a school district, for example, is one way that we've been able to achieve parks in certain areas. We need to work with private developers who are, and very often the council has made decisions that let developers off the hook for providing open space. In several cases, for example, they've allowed balconies to count toward open space, or other kinds of decisions. And we need to hold firm. Gotcha. It's important to have that kind of space available to people, again, in every area of our city.
Right. Let's shift to transportation infrastructure. You're in support of Prop 1, right?
I am.
And opposed to 45?
Yes, absolutely. I think urban rail is an important piece of the kind of work we need to do on transportation, in conjunction with some of what you've mentioned before. We need to increase our sidewalk connectivity throughout the city. We need to continue to support building bike lanes. But I think increasing our public transportation options in the form of urban rail would be a good thing. Would get more cars off the road.
What other, in case it doesn't pass, or even if it does, what other things do we need to be implementing beyond the bike lanes and the sidewalks? Increased
bus service, and particularly at other kinds of times would be helpful. We have constant need, and we are constantly hearing from people who want to see more bus service downtown in the evenings. I think that would be very helpful. There are areas of our town that are not served by bus service, and that's a real challenge for people who are transit dependent and might have opportunities for housing in some of those areas, but then don't have an opportunity to get to their job or their workplace or their child's school.
Are there other transportation strategies or demand management things that you see as promising?
Absolutely, and I know that we have some good partners out there in the community who are working on them, encouraging companies to support flexible hours, work from home schedules. We need to do all of those things. Right. There's not as one of our staff members said in a different context. There's not one thing that's going to be a home run. It's a series of smaller actions. Right.
You apparently have a lot of, in all of these notes, I encourage people to go online and read Kathie's comments or responses to all the different environmental questionnaires, because she did a very thorough job. There's a lot of energy efficiency experience that you have and things that you recommend, especially as it applies to affordability and helping people who are lower income in Austin. Can you share some of those ideas and how we expand the affordability and the efficiency programs and things like that?
Sure. Well, it's a great investment for the utility, because when we invest in energy efficiency, it puts off the need to invest in power purchase agreements, in new power plants, et cetera. So really encouraging investments, public investments in energy efficiency is a great way to go. What we need to do a better job of here in Austin is making sure that all ratepayers are benefiting from that. And it's sometimes difficult to reach renters, for example, and to make sure that we are encouraging property owners to invest in those energy efficiency programs.
Right.
And that conversation needs to also include, how it benefits the renters.
Right.
And I guess the second piece of that is to make sure that what happens in the end is not that the rents go up as a result of participation in an energy efficiency program. So it's a complicated equation, but we do need to figure out, one, how to reach and benefit renters as well as property owners, and also whether there are ways that we can really target those in the 200 to 400% of federal poverty guidelines. Really, how do we reach those who need the programs who might not qualify, for example, for the low-income weatherization program or some of the other programs targeting those in lower income brackets.
Great. Well, we could talk for hours because you know all of this and you've been serving on council. And thank you for taking the time to be here and talk with me.
Well, I really
appreciate
it. Thank you.